Hi, everybody. This is Bill Bronchick, and welcome to Webinar Wednesdays. Today, I have a special guest, Lena Belamayo, who's the president of a new startup in Colorado, which is going to be nationwide, Home Buyers Unite. This is a very interesting new trend that she's going to be talking about, which is people co-buying houses together. And, with the price of housing and, of course, the cost of rent exploding in a lot of cities, this is going to be a very new, exciting trend, whether it's people living together or investors and residents buying together or investors buying together. There's so many different ways to do it, and this is going to be the biggest platform for hooking up people who want to co-invest or co-buy real estate together. So, without further ado, let me introduce Lena Belamayo, the founder of Home Buyers Unite. Welcome.
Thanks, Bill. Nice to be on this show. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we're doing and how we're helping people extend their resources.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. This platform that you launched, just tell us all about it.
So basically what I'd like to do today is just talk a little bit about, who we are and who we serve and how things work, and then kind of go through some of the highlights for maybe opportunities to purchase and where that might be. But our platform is primarily designed to help people extend their resources. So we provide the opportunity for people to co-buy with confidence. That's what we like to say. We provide guidance, and we help people who already have a partner and want some structure to that agreement and that partnership. And we also eventually want to move to the point where we have enough membership that we can help people partner with one another as members of HBU. So just quickly to talk a little bit to the resources that we provide, because people will often say, wow, buying property together, that's a little scary. What if the person doesn't pay? What if they're not, doing their part? And people have been co-buying for some time, but they haven't been doing it in a structure that provides guidance and support to help them avoid problems. So we provide agreements, background checks, and access to lenders and agents, and some guidance to help people do their co-buying in a process that makes sense, that they otherwise would not have access to, and it's free.
Free, that's the best part.
Right.
Okay, so homebuyersunite.com is the website, and what will people find on your website? What type of resources?
So when you go to our website, let me go back for a second. When you go to our website, homebuyersunite.com, you'll find FAQ, you'll find video, you'll find a blog, you'll find the process, which is the most important thing, the how it works. And you'll be able to get acquainted with the process. And then we have what we call a readiness assessment. And that's where our visitors are encouraged to put in their information and to reach out to us so we can know a little bit more about what their goals are. Are you looking to co-buy soon? Do you have a co-buy partner? Do you need one? Do you need to get pre-qualified? Do you need an agent? That kind of stuff. So we help them get all ready, if you will. Our readiness assessment is designed to ask those good questions and help us be in the best position to help them. But there are a variety of different types of potential co-buyers, and I'll speak to that in a couple of slides. But that is also something that we help determine what type of buyer you are and what the resources are that would be best to help you.
Great.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is really why, right? Why co-buying? Why now? What's the big deal now? And one of the things that I realized early on in my career, because I've been doing marketing and communications for the Fortune 500 for a long time, is that timing is everything, right? So if you get the right timing and you have the right information, you can make some really good decisions that can really influence how you build your wealth. And right now in the marketplace, it's very obvious that co-buying is a way to extend your resources because there's a lot of affordability challenge in the marketplace. But that affordability challenge provides us who are looking at information and making smart choices a lot of opportunity. And in this particular slide, what I've done is I just put 3 data points up. Obviously, we know affordability is a challenge, but this is really designed to put it in context for us. So the National Association of Realtors has a tremendous research machine, and their chief economist, Lawrence Yun, has shared that we've had a 48% increase in the cost of housing and only a 15% increase in income since 2011. That is by and large influencing a lot of potential buyers, and it's definitely a factor for investors. The other 2 points on this particular slide really talk about how much that movement is. In 1950, the second bullet shows us that we had the median home price was 2.2 times the average yearly income. And 2013, it was 3.7, and it's even more now. So the last point really speaks to how does that affect us and why should we care? And really the point is this. Long ago, our parents, right, in 1949, they could afford a home and they could pay it off. But today, it's a much, much more difficult climate. So between 1949 and 2018, mortgage debt as a percent of GDP grew from 15% to 80%.
That's an unbelievable stat. I mean, either our economy is really good or people are really in hock up to their ears.
Yeah, it's, I mean, debt is just incredible. Consumer debt is just continuing to rise. It's quite a challenging market. And that's why I say for those of us and your investor audience who are thinking of, okay, I realize the challenge. How do I use my resources wisely, and how do I make the most of them in this challenging economy? And that's what co-buying is all about.
Fantastic.
So I want to talk for a few minutes about who these potential HBU Homebuyers Unite members might be. And I had mentioned it earlier, and this is not an exhaustive list. Obviously, investors, that's why we're here talking to your population of audience members with or without partners, right? People who already have a roommate. An interesting statistic, 30% of working age adults now live with somebody who is not a family member, a love interest, or a college student. 30%. That number goes up drastically, depending on the cost of the market. Like, for example, in LA, 45% of people live with a roommate, 40% in New York. So we know there are people who already are living with somebody and they're signing leases, obviously. So they're committing to a specific period of time and a financial obligation. And it's because of the, cost and affordability of that particular market. Many of those people may want to move into a place where they actually own a portion of some real estate instead of just renting. So that's a population. And then we have the rest that you can read. Parents and grandparents, obviously that last bullet is going to be something I talk to. But how do we as parents look out for our children? How do we support them in this economy? And co-buying may be an option for them. So,
I never really thought about the grandparents thing, the parents and their parents buying a home together to take care of the aging parents, and the aging parents probably have more saved up cash. But their kids, their adult kids, have the income to support a mortgage.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect co-buying scenario. Yeah.
We talk about the millennial population often, 73 to 75 million millennial cohort, and they're making less than $50K a year before taxes. That's really not a lot of money. And then we have these different types of external constraints, like student loans, for example, and other kinds of burdens that make it very difficult for them on their own to purchase property. And then we have this Gen X group and even the younger baby boomers who are often straddled with some of that student loan debt. $100 million was the figure I last saw a couple of months ago for debt among the Gen X and baby boomers for their children and for their college tuition. So it's become a challenge on a number of different generational fronts. Yeah.
Right. And if you elect me, I will get rid of that debt.
Yes, there's definitely options for us when we go to the voting poll. So, that particular slide is a perfect segue into this slide. So as investors, there's a couple of slides that are important, and I would like to draw your attention to this one in particular. And here's why. When we think about investing in real estate, we want to make smart choices. Where's the economy going? Where's the best place to buy? Why? What data helps us make that determination? And in this particular slide, I want to, share that it's not a surprise to us in whatever market you're in to look around and see, this construction boom, apartment buildings going up like, gangbusters everywhere, just apartment buildings. And why is that? And how is it that particular advent should influence where we buy and how we buy? Well, this particular slide is really intended to share what kind of market you want to look for as an investor and what kind of investment you may want to consider top of mind. So if you look at the top data point here, it says just 30 markets where 40% of the population live received 60% of the new jobs created in the last 5 years. So you want to go where there's more people, you want to go where there's jobs, because they're going to be able to be responsible renters. And one of the considerations for that is, hey, why wouldn't you want to buy an apartment building if you know that there's going to be a ton of people who are going to be qualified and looking for housing? That's what you want. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to secure that continual income. And buying an apartment, complex on your own is tough. That's not an easy thing to do. Even for people who may have the money. Maybe you don't want to extend yourself that far. And that's a perfect opportunity for you to do some co-buying.
Yeah.
So I would say, definitely something to think about. What are your thoughts there, Bill?
I agree with that. The trends are changing, and you have to know what the micro trends are in your industry and follow those or lose the cheese.
That's right. Yeah. So as investors, I would encourage you to consider, possibly buying some multi-unit property and doing that with a partner. Of course, using our service so we can work with you on that contract and that co-buyer agreement to protect your interest. But definitely food for thought.
Yeah, something to think about too is, people are doing the Airbnb thing. So buying a big single family home with a partner, within the co-buyer, a friend, a relative, or whatever, and just renting them out short term. That's a lot of people are doing this.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. The sharing economy is just moving along at a great pace. So the next thing I wanted to share with the investor audience is where to buy, right? Because there's so many options, and this is not, exhaustive. It's not exclusive, but this is some really important data that was shared not long ago from the NAR, National Association of Realtors, and it speaks to, the top markets, the top 10 markets where they're predicting that we're going to have price appreciation, right? So they're saying, the top markets to have home price appreciations that outpace the rest of the country over the next 3 to 5 years. So they're projecting based on a number of different factors where if you were investing over a longer period of time and you were just looking at market appreciation, where you might want to direct your attention. And I looked at this list and I thought it was great. Your audience can obviously look at this list and see if there's anything there of interest. But I found it fascinating that we in Colorado have 2 of those markets.
Yeah.
Fort Collins and Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Not surprising. And I've been saying Tampa St. Pete now for years has not recovered from the last bust as much as the east coast of Florida, and been advising people to buy on the west coast of Florida for a while, and not surprising to see it's boomed down.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so I would say as investors, you want to think about, those markets where you're going to have good quality renters, multi-unit opportunities, and then, markets where you see that your money is going to appreciate, or at least you have the better chance of that happening. And so, yeah, this is I think a really good slide, and I would encourage the audience of investors to consider these factors for sure.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of examples. So I know people are like, well, that's great, but what does it look like? What does a deal look like? And so, instead of leaving it to the imagination, I thought I'd put up a couple potential deals for us to discuss. So let's say you buy a complex, a fourplex in Colorado Springs. And this particular transaction came from one of the agents that works with HBO. And he provided a couple of options here, and he did the numbers. And you can find his contact information on our site, homebuyersunite.com, in the About Us section. But let's say you buy a fourplex in Colorado Springs, $700K. You can do one of two things. You can either buy it with someone else and, split that between the two of you and share the equity evenly. And you can live in one each, and then, use the other two for short-term rentals. Obviously, that would be very lucrative. And you could even, if you structure it properly, can find a way to pay off your mortgage without having to put in additional funds. This is an option, and this is to your point about the Airbnb and the short-term rentals. It's amazing. You can remodel them, and you can use all four of those particular, all four of the fourplex to have short-term uses. And there's a lot of people in Colorado Springs who are military, moving from one place to the other, or possibly in transition, and that could be quite lucrative, as much as $2,000 to $3,000 a month per person. So definitely something to think about.
Absolutely.
And then here's what about buying with your family? And, there's always the question, even it's your children, you want to make sure that you have a structure in place that provides some safeguards for, the avoidance of any kind of bad decision making, or, the risk of losing the investment. And so you want to help your young person or family member to really be in their best possible position to thrive from that investment. And so in this particular scenario, you may have a son, daughter, granddaughter, or other family member or friend, and you want to help them. You can definitely help with the down payment, of course. If they qualify, they can put it into their name, and they could be the primary principal and resident of that property. But then you can have an agreement on the other side that says, hey, at a certain point, we're going to move this into an LLC for us, so that we have the way in which we can transition this investment into a larger portfolio. And I've heard Bill talk in the past about a longer term plan. And I think that's very important. We need to be smart when it comes to how we think about our investments, not just today, but, down the road, right? Where is there going to be appreciation? What's the trends happening? Where are people investing in jobs? What companies are moving where? What properties are going to be the best to buy? How can I structure my portfolio over the next several years? And how do I fold my children into that? Because at some point, we're going to be wanting to leave them better than they are right now. And so our plan should include us and our family, if we have one. And if that's a priority for you, I think that should be part of that plan that, Bill's often talking about.
Yeah, this is a great way, because HUD properties are very competitive because they offer them first, obviously, to owner occupant, and then to investors. So if you've got an adult child who could bid, and you can help them with the down payment, it's only 3.5%, or even do what's the other one called? The FHA 203K, where they'll lend you put down 3.5%, and then they'll give you 96% plus the fix-up costs to fix it up.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's got to be owner-occupied. Your son or daughter has to legitimately live there. They say a year, but if they move out in 6 months, they can't do anything about it. But they will check. They'll knock on the door and make sure utilities are in their name, and they will check. So don't try to scam it. But then down the road, like you said, down the road, they can move out, and then you put it in an LLC and then make it a rental.
Exactly. Do that, rinse and repeat a few times, and you'll be in a good position. So, it's really getting into the market, right, Bill? Just really kind of wading in.
Yeah, It's a great idea. I like this model.
Nice. So I don't want to hog up the whole time. I want to make some time for some Q&A, but here's my contact information, obviously available as well at homebuyersunite.com. But certainly reach out with questions and suggestions and or requests for support, or refer somebody our way. If you know an agent or a lender that would like to work with us and be part of our network, they are also welcome to reach out to us too.
Great. So you can help people with the logistics, the financing, the agreement, the how to structure the arrangement, the living arrangement, and from soup to nuts, walk them through it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's open it up for some Q&A. Michelle here from Columbus, you mentioned Columbus, had a question, had a comment that there are bidding wars for properties now there. So not surprising, it's going on in a lot of cities. Columbus has been hot for a little time now, and probably will be continue so. Now, I don't know about Cleveland, but certainly there are some highlighted cities throughout the Rust Belt that are doing very well, and some that I don't know if I would buy it, but that's a good one. All right, let's see here. Let me stream through the questions here. Fred has a question here. He's asking about what does the agreement look like between like a parent and child, where the child lives in the property. What sort of written agreement? What does that look like?
So that's a great question, because we don't have an example agreement up, but we're talking about a contract, right? So it's even though it's your child or maybe your fiance, you still want to have a very specific set of communications and that contract that says what is the equity sharing, what is the action in the event of certain events. How will you exit that property? If these things happen, how will you, address any kind of repairs? Who's responsible for what? And at what point and what process do you decide to move on to doing something else? Those are very important pieces to have in place. And make no mistake, it is a legal contract. And it is designed to provoke that conversation and to set out those standards and requirements for that partnership.
Yeah, great. Nancy asks, in the situation where you're leasing to two unrelated tenants, how would that work to encourage them to buy the house from you if you wanted to do that? Just send them to HBU? I mean, how does that work?
What a brilliant question. In fact, I feel like we're having a mind share right there because I really feel like there's this bridge that is absolutely bound to take place, where we have people who are renting now and they want to move into some type of like rent to own arrangement or an opportunity to have a ramp up. And I would say that in a scenario like that, that would probably be a perfect use of our co-buyer agreement, because we have to remember it is the framework of that agreement that can be modified based on that transaction. And I would encourage you to also check in with Bill. Obviously, he's a very brilliant attorney. and he can help you with, making the adjustments that you might need to that co-buyer agreement that would, fold in the process for, hey, how do you go from being a renter to an owner, and how best to protect your interest there as the landlord. Bill, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the landlord, a lot of landlords will lease or rent to own to a tenant, but usually that's one family. That's one person or one family. The idea of doing a rent to own to two people who, co-share together and then eventually buy the house from the landlord is something completely brand new.
Yeah, it's I think it's an opportunity for people to test, I guess, before you buy, right?
Right.
How can I afford this? Do I feel comfortable in this scenario, in this environment? Can I do it for 36 months or a year, however long? And I think it's a really it's an interesting thing. There's a structure in place specifically for obviously rent to buy. And I think that people are more likely to feel less intimidated by that option than, especially people who don't own property right now.
Right.
So I think it's definitely something that is an opportunity for sure. And I think just finding the right kind of agreement will be very important. So many times a lot of landlords will say, hey, we're going to take a portion of your monthly rent and put it towards the down payment or this particular transaction at X period of time. So there's a number of different ways to address that, but I certainly feel like that's a way to help people get the confidence and to feel comfortable with an upcoming transaction. And so I think it's a brilliant idea, and I definitely feel like it's something that's going to happen.
Great. Jim asks, on the website, do you actually list properties that are available for co-buying, or is that something you have realtors who work with people?
Yeah, so we don't do that currently. I have thought about partnering with some of the other more popular sites that provide you with listings, and there's so many, right? Zillow, Redfin. You can easily go there and find a property, but I really prefer to get our agents to work with you because they know what they're doing, and they've been doing it a very long time, and they may have access to properties that are not listed.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want the experts in the marketplace, lenders and agents, to be able to help you specifically through this program. And the thing about it is, I want to stress again, our platform is free for buyers, right? So you get the resources, access to these lenders, agents, and we have some coming on board every day because we're just getting geared up here. But we definitely have provide you with some of these co-buyer agreements that you can modify. And just so that you're aware, these agreements on their own are thousands of dollars. They don't come. You can't go anywhere to find them but here. And it's absolutely the way in which you can protect yourself and your interests. So the infrastructure that we're providing is free to all members and anybody who wants to work with us. And there's no obligation. We don't share any sensitive data. We're not going to ask for your social security number or any of your information. We will leave the lender that you work with to go through that with you. And so the risk is very low. And why would you not want to learn more?
Fantastic. HomeBuyersUnite.com. That's the place to go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Lena Bellomayo, for sharing this very informative system and your website, HomeBuyersUnite.com, which is, those you can see, it's scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. For those of you watching on the playback, HomeBuyersUnite.com. And on the previous slide, if you watch the playback, was her contact info. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.
Thanks a bunch. Take care, Bill.